Well, we are back to another Corey Coffee and Conspiracy class, and a couple things before we get started. We obviously took a month off. I was skiing, discipleship conference. Yeah, I worked last week, but that worked out because the missionary was here, and so now we pick it up. So obviously, I'll do a little bit of review, not tons of it, but obviously we're studying some unique things right now. But let me do a disclaimer, if you will. So when we do these Corey Coffee and Conspiracies, they're really cool in the fact that they allow us as Christians to view what's going on outside of our world through the lenses of Scripture and be able to see how things are lining up with the Bible. It helps us confirm the Bible. So what happens is we do a lot of that, and then we'll switch up and do straight up Bible in this class, where we'll do a series on Job or Song of Solomon. One of the things is I've noticed, especially online views, is there's really three types of people involved in listening to this class. One is those that get all geeked out on conspiracy theory. That's a lot of the online stuff, but it's even people in this class. I do conspiracy, you get all excited and you get pumped up and you're like, oh wow, this is awesome. Great. It's kind of like the tail on a hog. It's kind of cute, but it doesn't put any meat on the hog, all right? You don't get anything from it. It's cool to study it, and conspiracy's awesome, but you can go way too far with it, and you can lose your balance of understanding what this is about. Then there's the other side, which is, I don't think we should deal with that at all. Well, those people are just as wrong as the people who geek out constantly on it. And then what you have is somebody in the middle who says, hey man, I get it. I want to know what's going on out there, but at the same time, I want to be able to study my Bible every day, find out where I live. And so those are the things you need to just kind of constantly question yourself is, what is my motivation in this? Why do I study these things? And guys, I am all for the conspiracy, but here's what I do know. If I switch to Bible and do a Song of Solomon, my ratings on YouTube drop tremendously, big time. And if I go into this stuff here, people geek out on it, and man, my ratings go way up. And it's really tempting to keep it going because, hey man, I get an email every month that says, hey, you're awesome, and you got 34,000 minutes of views on your YouTube this month. And so that's really cool, but at the same time, we don't forget why we do this. And so, now, the last, I want to read this to you. It's been a while since I showed it, but since we're getting into some stuff tonight, I want you to remember what Proverbs 18:13 says. He that answereth the matter before he heareth it is a folly and a shame unto him. And so, in other words, when you're hearing something, maybe like a conspiracy or a conspiracy theory, you do know they're different, right? When you're hearing these things, and maybe from the first time, even God's saying, look, somebody that answers something before he really dives into it and understands it, it's a folly and a shame, man. You take it in before you come up with your answer. Now, before the last time we met, this is what happened in between our studies, is I've been teaching about pyramids for years in this church, and I am one who believes that the pyramids are actually power plants pre-Genesis 6. In other words, the world of Genesis 6 before the flood was more advanced than the one you and I live in today, and I believe this is what they are. The official narrative of the world today is, oh no, they're tombs for pharaohs, and that's not true. They've never found a mummy. They've never found any of that. Well, a recent study has come out, March the 12th, just a few weeks ago, where some scientists are taking this frequency type sonar Doppler effect things and studying what's under the Great Pyramids over there in Egypt. And it actually, based off these renderings that you can see here, they have come up with these 3D models, and they've found all these chambers inside the pyramids that they didn't know was there before. And they're somehow connected to 8 pillars that are going down. Some of these pillars go down 1,000 meters. That's a kilometer. right? Now, if you think a bunch of slaves to the Egyptians dug 1,000-foot piers and put these shafts in there, and what they found is each one of these shafts had these circular coils wrapped around them, which tells you if these things are true, then what we've been telling you about the earth producing energy, then these guys had figured it out how to get it up here and get it out of the pyramid and get more or less a Wi-Fi type energy system going to the people. Now, it's still in its infant stages, but it's just really cool that some of this stuff is connecting. I'm going to show you a video or two about it and let you see it.
Discovery regarding one of the Great Pyramids of Giza. As you can imagine, this news has been met with all kinds of emotions across the stratosphere. You've got people that are excited, people skeptical, people outright angry. Zahi Hawass, he's probably the most famous Egyptologist in the world, the most mainstream person you could find. He came out with a blazing statement slamming the alleged discovery as fake news and calling the scientists a group of amateurs. He said this, quote, "All this information is completely wrong and has absolutely no scientific basis. They used techniques that are not approved nor validated." Now keep in mind, this is the same guy who spent a career telling us with a straight face that the Great Pyramids are just tombs. But then we've got guys like Christopher Dunn, who's on the other side of the spectrum, who would be considered one of the leading alternative history researchers, an aerospace engineer who wrote the Giza power plant. He believes that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were sophisticated ancient generators of clean energy. They serve to stimulate the release and collection of what's called electrons in the Earth's crust by harmonizing seismic energy. Christopher Dunn stated this, quote, "My initial impressions are that if the reported scan data and analysis are correct, this would be a major discovery and a validation of my own theories. The CAD drawings seem to represent a massive Tesla-like electromagnetic earthquake machine. But even without the CAD, I believe there is enough in the scans to warrant further investigation. If it turns out to be fictional, it's a more compelling and interesting fiction than the pyramids as tombs theory we have been taught. If it is proven to be fact, we could be on the threshold of a bright and harmonious future."
If it comes out to be true, it literally changes how we view history. It would, now, not for us that are Genesis 6 believers, but for the vast majority of society. Here's another one.
This may be the most important news of our lifetime. What you're looking at are leaked images, and it changes everything we know about the ancients and pyramids. The image above is showing what's underneath the middle pyramid of Giza, not the Great Pyramid. The team has discovered 8 wells with spiral tunnels around each one underneath the pyramid. You go 640 meters into the bedrock of the plateau. To give you a scale of what that is, the Great Pyramid is 146 meters tall. That's 4.5 times the height into the ground. They end at 2 cubes that are 80 meters by 80 meters. We don't know what's in them. That's not all. Inside the pyramid, 5 new chambers, almost exactly like the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber, were discovered. Chambers are arranged in the same way the towers at Angkor Wat are arranged. The King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid is made out of absolutely massive blocks of rose granite from 900 kilometers away in Aswan. That chamber is a perfect 2-square rectangle in geometric terms. The team used that chamber to test the accuracy of their Doppler technology for imaging. That revealed the full internal structure of the middle pyramid and these weird tuning fork things that are going into the ground. New features at Angkor Wat and new pyramids in Guatemala were discovered using non-invasive technologies as well. Why is this one so important? This remains the current explanation for how these were built. Explaining one of these tunnels this way would be insane. They did it 8 times. This level of sophistication is not only beyond their capabilities, it more closely resembles our computer architecture, except they were doing it in 3D. Can't explain those with that anymore. This conference was held 2 days ago. More findings will be released every day, and I will cover each and every one of them. I'll post my thoughts on this.
All right. So, and by the way, Angkor Wat is, if you go to Cambodia with us, we take everybody to Angkor Wat, which is, it is unbelievable to go and see that ancient temple, and he's showing how those are all connected. So, and by the way, this is a line that you, if you, on a flat map, if you see how they're connected, the ones in China, the ones in Egypt, and the ones in Mexico, they had the exact arc or same design as Orion's belt, the exact same way that they're laid out when you look above. Once again, the Egyptians didn't build them. All right. Now, let's get back to what we're studying tonight. All that was free. I just figured I'd fill you in on what's went down since the last time we had a class. Now, symbolism and sacred geometry. That's obviously what we're studying. And we know that guys like Manly P. Hall, a 33rd degree Freemason, said the way that you convey information and secret information, really esoteric information or hidden wisdom, and how you pass that down from generation and from culture to culture is by putting it in symbolism. And so that's what we've been doing, is looking at these symbols. Manly P. Hall to the right, Francis Bacon in the center, and Albert Pike over here on the left. The left. Okay, I'm turning around, then I'm looking at you. So now, bottom line is, if you don't understand who these three guys are, then don't come attack me about Freemasonry, because you don't know what you're talking about. Now, I want you to notice who these guys are, because in these books is where we learn a lot of these things. Manly P. Hall, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. But we also have Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. Now, I'm going to show you this one.
Albert Pike said this about Freemasonry in this very book. He says that Freemasonry is based almost totally on the Kabbalah.
Yes.
Jewish magic.
Yes.
And many Jewish rabbis have admitted this, and they say that in all of the rituals of Freemasonry, you will find the Kabbalah, the system of magic of the Jews. For example, the 30th degree of Freemasonry is the Knights of Kadosh.
Yes.
And it involves skulls and black robes and a knight laying in a coffin speaking from the dead.
Yes.
And all of this turning to the god of the underworld, the gods of the underworld, is all related to Jewish Kabbalah, because they believe in necromancy,
yes,
communication with the dead. And they believe that in the last days,
listen up,
a Kabbalistic master will come upon the earth, and there will be a Jewish utopia, a new world order of the Jews, but they must go along with what are called the Noahide laws and be good Gentiles and go along with Kabbalah. And if they recognize that the Holy Spirit is the serpent. And by the way, that's also taught in the 32nd degree of Freemasonry, that is, the serpent is the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And he is going to encircle the earth.
So did you hear about the encircling? That's the Ouroboros, where the snake is eating itself. The guy there, this is Tex Mars. He's unbelievable to study after. This guy here is Freeman TV. That is literally one of the guys I have studied after for years. Solid dude. However, notice what he said. There's going to become this Kabbalic magician that comes on the scene. Okay, because it's all based off magic, right? Right? So do you actually believe that stuff? So what do you do with Thessalonians that when it's clear that there's going to be a guy who's coming on the scene who can do wondrous miracles and works? You know, Benny Hinn, all that stuff's fake. But the guy coming on the scene is going to be able to really do it. And he's going to pull all the world's religions together. And when you get down to the core of it all, they're all the same. They're just seen in different flavors. And he's going to be bringing them in. And notice, this is Albert Pike, the 33rd degree Mason, who is buried in the house of the temple in Washington, D.C., just north of the White House. Okay? He's the one writing about this. That's Tex Mars and Freeman who are just explaining it. Now, So let's get into Hollywood, okay? I wanted to show you those, but we started with this a little last week, okay? And I want to bring it out again today. Hollywood. Why is it called Hollywood? All right. One, the Druids, when you go over into Europe and start studying the Druids, you start to find out that a Druid priest is a magician or a soothsayer in the ancient Celtic religions. Now, pay attention to that, because I'm about to pull some Bible out, and I just want you to see if you can notice some stuff. But it was the Druids that did this, and they always used for their wand the holly branch. And so Merlin and your boy, I can never think of his name, Harry Potter, when they do those wands, they're made out of Hollywood, because that's how they cast their spell. And that's how they controlled the people, was through that. And so Hollywood is what those branches were made out of. It is tied in with Saturnalia. So when you're studying Saturnalia, which is December 25th, pagan religion, and what the whole reason you guys bring those green trees into your house, Jeremiah talks about this. The reason that comes about is it's tied into this same paganism. And so what happens is it was always made of these green trees, and many of them had hollies involved in it. All right? And it's Saturnalia, which is why we get the word balls of holly during Christmas time. But it's also why it's called Tinseltown when you go to Hollywood. That was the nickname they gave it. Okay? Now watch. Francis Bacon, since we're going to bring him up again, Francis Bacon said this, and by the way, I believe this is the real William Shakespeare. I don't believe William Shakespeare is a real person. I think it was a pseudonym for Francis Bacon, but that's a whole nother story. But he says it's easier to teach your audience with entertainment than with lecture. Right? How many of you guys have ever seen me do the series on discipleship with the t-shirts and bring the guys up on stage? Okay, how many of you guys have ever watched me bring guys up on stage and do the 12 sons of Jacob? Sticks out, right? How many of you guys remember me doing the 4th chapter of Ephesians? By the way, when I taught in the book Gospel of John, he's coming up on it, I talked about the Feast of Libations, and I went and got willow branches, and I had my kids come up with shofar horns, blowing horns while I preach. You guys remember this? Okay, right. So when we add entertainment, it sticks better to you than just straight lecturing. That's one of the reasons for years I've always tried to intermingle comedy into my sermons, because if I'm going to hit you hard, I want to be able to soften the blow with comedy. And if I can keep you entertained, you'll listen to me better. And so there's the reasoning behind the madness that we are in a pulpit, all right? And so the idea, if you're funny, great, it works. If you're just in it, don't. So, all right, now, so Francis Bacon's saying, listen, it's easier to teach these people something through entertainment. Think about how we teach children. Barney, Blue's Clues. What's the big one he's got on right? Rachel. No, Miss Rachel, but there's the other one, Danny Go. That's the one I hear about every evening. All right? It's entertainment, and so these kids are learning this way. These guys were on this, and by the way, the same way kids learn, adults learn. It's the exact same method. Okay, now watch. This lady named Jess Scott said, people are sheep and the TV is the shepherd. That's how you think about it. Ever since, I grew up in the 80s. Kids came home from school, what'd you first thing you do? Walked in, popped on the television. And you just, what's that? Oh, well, yeah, if you were allowed to. I was grounded most of the time. So, all right. And then, so television is mind control through subliminal imaging and messaging. That's literally what they're doing with it. That's why last time we met, we said tell-a-vision. What does it mean? It's basically telling you a vision. And television shows are called programs, okay? And that's how you can study all this stuff out. You're being programmed through vision. We even talked about this in the fact of, you watch something from the 80s now and you go, ooh, that was subtle, but now I see how that's a big deal now. Okay? Stuff that was just a small little deal. Early 94, Ross's wife divorces him to marry a woman. And back then that was a big deal, but now that's everyday thing. And if you left here, went up to Steve's class and asked the high schoolers about what they experience sexuality today, it's totally different than what you and I would have experienced. And it's been slowly brought around. Shows like Sex in the City making women out to be just like men when it comes to sexuality. And it was supposed to be a show about liberating women, right? Do you know who the writers are? Gay men. Isn't that interesting? All right? Now, watch this. I didn't show this last time because I was nervous. And my wife's giving me the eye like, don't do it. And so I went back and I've watched it 3 times, okay? So now, this is the thing. This is a show called Focus, and it was in 2015. They bring this out, and Will Smith is playing this guy who's gambling. And I want you to, this one I got to play a little different, all right? What's that? Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Dude, what are you doing?
I'm good for it. Double it.
You got a problem, my friend.
Take those binoculars. Pick any player on or off the field, and I will guess the number.
Any player. That's like 100 to 1.
It's good odds for you.
It worked at the house. It worked at the office.
That's crazy. Oh, I don't like it.
Okay. I'll sweeten it for you. You pick the player, and she'll guess the number.
What?
I guess number... Wait.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man with a taste. I've been around for a long year. Stole many a man, so they.
Number 55. Did you know who he was going to pick?
We told him to. We've been telling him all day.
From the moment he left his hotel room, we've been priming him, programming his subconscious. He's been seeing the number 55 all day long. On the elevator, in the lobby, even the stick pin on the doormat. Not only that, we loaded his route from the hotel to the stadium. He looks out the window, primers are everywhere. Now he doesn't see it, but he does. There's no getting around it. He even sees far.
That is genius.
And it's not only what he sees, it's what he hears. The Mandarin word for 5 is Wu. There are 124 Wu-Wus in sympathy for the devil. Now he's not registering it, but it's all there. So when he picks up those binoculars, looks out on the field, sees a familiar face with the number 55 on his jersey, some little voice in the back of his mind says, that's it. And he thinks it's intuition, and he picks.
Do you want me to write it down?
And you, being in the dark, was the convincer. We call that the little...
So, notice how they kept using the word primer. They're priming you, they're throwing these numbers out. The guy chose 55 simply because it was in subconscious. Now notice he says it's not only what he saw, it's what he heard. So do you think the music of today, forever, but especially of today, do you think they're just playing music? You ever study on who owns the prisons in the United States? They're not owned by the government. They're owned by individual corporations. Those same corporations own the record labels that produce rap music. Now, do you think there's a correlation between, hey, I make money off of how many prisoners we have in here, to the correlation of I need you to basically prime them to think a certain way and act a certain way? That's why it's so much violence that goes on in rap music. And so when we're saying, hey, you shouldn't listen to that, it's not us going, hey, we're independent Baptists. Let's go. That's not our attitude. We're going, hey, they're teaching you a lesson. By the way, let me tell you this, and my wife has heard me say this plenty of times. You're being discipled, whether you want to be or not. Either the world is discipling you or God's people are going to disciple you, but you're going to get discipled. There is no choosing to go, I'm not going to be discipled. Oh, yes, you are. All of us are. And what the world is doing is priming us to do that. That's why he did that woo song. And by the way, the sympathy of the devil, you know what that song's about? He gets to the end, he says, guess my name? It's Lucifer. All right? Now, social media. You ever notice that there's nothing social about media? The average kid today has way less friends than kids did in the 80s and even before that. Because we went outside and interacted. And we're actually social. You ever notice that the way the system works is the word like social media, we're going to name it social, and there's nothing social about it. The Patriot Act. There's nothing patriotic about the Patriot Act. I'll give you a better one. The Affordable Health Care Act. Who would say that my health insurance is now cheaper and more readily available and better coverage? I don't know one person goes, oh, me. Insurance got way worse, but we called it Affordable Health Care Act. We always title things and then give it to you to where you think you're getting something, much like social media. And you ever notice how addictive it is? Now, if you're sitting there and you go, not me, I'm not addicted to any of it. Yeah, sure you ain't. It may not be television, it may not be, other things, but it might be Facebook, it may be Instagram. I just know a guy like me that likes to scroll. I'll look around, and I'm not just scrolling stuff, I'm scrolling to get information, but I'll look up and go, 30 minutes of my life is gone. And I'm never getting that back. And there was nothing social about it. I didn't hang out with anybody. And do you think that the social media is designed to program you the same way the television is? It's the same thing going on. Now watch this. All right? You ever look at the X logo? Because Twitter's no longer called X, or Twitter. It's X, right? If you invert them, you have the Masonic label. Now watch this. How about SpaceX? This is your boy Elon. And oh, by the way, I'm talking to her. I'm buying stock in Tesla on purpose. I figure if it's going to be the Antichrist that owns all that, I'm going to get some before I leave out in the rapture. Right? So, but you ever notice the word X keep showing up? You ever wonder why that is? I'm not trying to blow my cover from a few weeks from now, but that X thing keeps showing up. Check this out. Revelation 13:17, and that no man might buy or sell save he that hath the mark, that's one, or the name, that's two, of the beast, or the number of his name. So there's actually three parts: mark, name, and number. But this word mark, okay, if you look up it in Strong's Concordance, you can barely see it probably from where you're sitting, but it's X-A-P-A-Y-U-A. Now understand that Greek word has been given English lettering so that we can understand it, but notice the letter X. Now I'm going to show you a video. Some of what this guy says he's a moron, but the rest of it's pretty good stuff.
You see that right there? That is the mark of the beast. So what you just saw is the oldest text of the book of Revelation, Apocalypse right here. All you have to do is navigate to literally the Vatican Library, where they have the oldest known copy. It dates back to 400 AD. Where Revelation chapter 13, the very last verse is talking about the mark being 666. Actually, that's what it looks like right there in the Greek, the original Greek. And just in case you need a refresher, this is what the very last verse of chapter 13 of Revelation says. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take what we saw in the original manuscript.
This is where he's off.
Digitize it, make it look way higher quality, but I'm also going to modify it a little bit. Because when you look at the original Mark of the Beast from the original manuscript in Greek, and you just play with it a little bit like I'm doing right here, all right? You just flip these little characters a little bit. Actually, the first and last stay the same, but you kind of flip the middle. Look what it becomes. And can you see what this is really talking about? And do you see it? You can see it, right? Come on, man. You can see it, can't you? Please tell me you can see it. And where are they wearing it? Huh. On their foreheads. Interesting.
Now, I disagree with that part, but I'm trying to, and I disagree with his oldest manuscript thing, by the way. But the letter X, I've been teaching that for years, that the mark of the beast is the letter X, and we'll get more into that later on, but I just thought it was interesting that that was being thrown out there. Now, watch this. So, most of the young people in this room probably have no idea. WSB, Channel 2, Fox 5. Most of the younger generation is not going to go to that. The older folks are harder to convince at times because they've been raised up on this. No, we trust, Walter Cronkite. He's the most trusted man in America. And so what we're going to do is we're going to trust the news. And if you go, hey, man, CNN's lying to you. Oh, yeah, they are. Well, Fox is lying to you. Yeah, they probably are too, but the local guys is who I listen to. 90% of media is owned by 6 corporations. You get lied to if you're watching the news. Now, this is local media. Some of you have seen this, but check this out.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
they're all saying the same thing.
Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the community use their platforms to push their own personal lives and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
That seems to be something we hear a lot right now. Now, everything you just saw is the exact same news report. That wasn't different ones being played over each other. That is the exact same news report played in different cities. And they're all parodying it like a parrot. Just regurgitating what they say. Well, how's that possible? Because all of those companies are owned by the same corporations. And so if you turn on, I don't even know who the local dudes are anymore. It used to be Russ somebody. It's Russ Spencer. I don't know. But if you, they're just figureheads speaking whatever's read in front of them. They're Ron Burgundy. I know the younger people get that one. So what I'm trying to show you through all this is, guys, just because you're sitting here, and you know what this story is about? This whole story was about fake news from social media. In other words, yeah, all these people, they're going out here and they're studying this without, checking the facts. The facts of what? That all of you guys are saying the exact same thing? And so most younger people don't get news like that anymore. And the vast majority of this, CJ and I were talking about it, and he was like, look, everybody from my generation, he says, I don't know anybody that believes the 9/11 story. I don't either, by the way, and I'm 51 years old. Nobody believes the Kennedy story. The younger people, most older people have a tendency to look down on the younger people, but they are the first generation to come along in a long time and go, is that actually right? Or are we being lied to? And it's the older generation sometimes that we have to talk to, and they're going, oh, no, that's not the official. Believe the official story. And so what happens is you constantly are having to dig, and you have to constantly be looking through not only what you're being told, but using your brain at the same time, but yet we still have a standard of truth. All right? Now, watch. Do you believe in magic? Let's all sing it together. Right? So do you think it's real? David Blaine, for you older folks, David Copperfield. David Blaine's done made a deal with somebody. All right? Now, a lot of magic is simply illusion, right? But let's really study magic, okay? And let's see what God has to say about it. So Matthew 2:1 says, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. All right, well, we read about these guys. Oh, they're wise men. They're really smart guys. Well, if you go over here, it's magi, right? That's who they were, the magi, the wise men. It's the Greek word that's being used here is magos, all right? It's an Oriental scientist, or in other words, a magician, a sorcerer. 6 times in your King James Bible. So what did God just tell you the wise men were? The magicians, right? Now, hang on. Same word is used in Acts 13. Exact same Greek word that the King James translators called wise men in Matthew 2, but in Acts 13:6, it's used as sorcerer when it says, and when they had gone through the Isles of Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar-Jesus. All right? Now, same word is magi, or magi, magos. Now, you go back to Daniel chapter 2:27. You guys remember the story? Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. He's like, y'all got to explain the dream. And all the guys are like, well, tell us the dream. He's like, no. Tell me what the dream is, and I'll tell you if you're right. And Daniel comes around and is able to do it. Now, notice what they're called here. He said, Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magician, the soothsayers show unto the king. In other words, they weren't able to do it at the time. So does that mean magic is fake? They weren't able to do it then. Well, how about you go back over here to Exodus? And God says, hey, Moses, take Aaron, y'all go up, see Pharaoh, and take that stick with you. And I want you to throw that stick on the ground, and it's going to turn into a snake. You guys know this story? You know what goes down? Pharaoh's like, calls in his crew. They throw some sticks down. And boom, those turned into snakes. So when you have the ideology of going, oh, that stuff's not real. Yes, it is real. It's demonic. It's evil. And yet, the Wiccans and those that are involved in all kind of Luciferian and satanic rituals use magic, soothsaying, sorcery to make things happen on this planet. Now, we always go to the Ouija board because that's the easy one to go to. It's a little bit more sophisticated when they get into it. But do you understand that a Ouija board actually moves? Something's moving that thing. All right? Now, what is it? I don't know. I'm assuming a demon of some sort. Okay? Now, we move on. Let's get into Aleister Crowley, who was known as the wickedest man in the world. He lived from 1875 to 1947. Okay? Modern day Wiccans, modern day magicians, modern day soothsayers, almost all of them tie back into Aleister Crowley. Now, he founded the religion of Thelema, identifying himself as the prophet entrusted with guiding humanity into the eon of Horus. All right. And he self-titled, or he was self-titled the Beast 666. Notice him. He's a good-looking dude, isn't he? All right. The book of the law, sacred text that served as the basis of Thelema, announcing the start of the Aeon of Horus, the book declared that its followers should do what thou wilt and seek to align themselves with their true will through the practice of magic. And he spelled it just like that. But his whole statement was, do as thou wilt. In other words, do what you want to. You guys know of any of that kind of stories? You end up over here in the book of Judges towards the end, about 17, I think. In those days, men did everything right in their own eyes. That's what he was saying to do. Hey, so we live in a society today is, hey man, you do you. I'll do me. And don't judge me and I won't judge you. And so everybody just does what they want to do. And this guy was the proponent of getting that going. And it goes on throughout all of Hollywood. Now watch this. He was the head of Ordo Templi Orientis, or the Order of Eastern Templars. It's known as the OTO. That's how most people say it, so you don't have to deal with all of it. Now, it's interesting how good he looks. Do you see the woman next to him? And I use the word woman loosely. You know who that is? Barbara Bush. Now, when you go on the internet and you find out that Barbara Bush may be the daughter of this guy, and you think, oh, not according to Snopes. They said that's the fact checker said that isn't real. Until you find out that Pauline Pierce, her mother, spent a summer, nearly a little over that, hanging out with him over in France. 9 months later, the ugliest man who ever was born was born. Now, for those of you that are upset because I'm ripping on George Bush and the Republican Party woman, and I'm using that one loosely, I want you to understand, do you know about the fetus in their house? She had a miscarriage with the old man George, and George W. lived in that house with the fetus in the jar, and the family would just see it sitting there on the table. Now, I don't know whether she's married or related to Aleister Crowley, but can we agree that's a little jacked? I mean, something wrong with you. And yet, who knows? I know they kind of favor each other, though. But anyway, back to Aleister. Here's what he said. In the religion of Thelema, it is believed that the history of humanity can be divided into a series of aeons, each of which accompanied by its own form of magical religious expression. The first of these was the Aeon of Isis, which Thelemites believed occurred during the prehistory, and which saw mankind worshiping the great goddess symbolized by the ancient deity Isis. Now, remember, who is Isis? Ishtar, right? Semiramis. She's married to a guy in the Bible named Nimrod. Okay? And so he's saying, here's our goddess, Isis. And I am taking a little bit of time because over the next few weeks, we're going to start seeing symbols of this woman in Super Bowl commercials, in Super Bowl halftime, in the Grammys or the Oscars, and we're going to see this stuff, and you're going to go, what does that got to do with anything? Guys, you understand it all comes back to Genesis. It's there. Now watch. Now, if I can see here. All right, so this, after they get done with the Aeon of Isis, they enter into the Aeon of Osiris, a period that took place in the classical medieval centuries when humanity worshiped a singular male god symbolized by the Egyptian god Horus, and was therefore dominated by the patriarchal values. And finally, the third aeon is the aeon of Horus, which was controlled by the child god, symbolized by Horus. In this new aeon, the Thelemites believe that humanity will enter into a self-realization and self-actuation. Actualization. All right? Within the Thelemite religion, each of these aeons is believed to be characterized by their own specific magical formula, the use of which is very important and fundamental in understanding the Thelemic magic. Okay? Now, understand, we go from Isis to Osiris to Horus. The Bible would call that Semiramis, Nimrod, Tammuz. That 40 days of weeping, that days of Lent, that has to do with Tammuz, Horus. That whole December 25th, Christmas Day, that came from Osiris or Nimrod. Okay? That lady up there in the harbor, that's Isis. District of Columbia, that's her. There is so much of the world around you that is tied into those three individuals. And it all goes back to the Tower of Babel. So then when we get to Revelation 17 and we start talking to you about mystery Babylon, you got to understand 100% of what's going to go on in Revelation is tied into Genesis 10. And it's through all this stuff. All right? Now, Aleister Crowley inspired the counterculture movement of the 60s. You know those dirtbag hippies? We got any of them in here? That's the ones that Jerry was spraying down with a water hose when they were protesting. So Aleister Crowley appeared on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's among the Beatles' other heroes. Why did Aleister Crowley make the cut? In other words, if you go to... You ever seen this album cover? Sgt. Pepper by the Beatles. There he is. These are all their heroes. Here's Aleister Crowley. All right? Now, notice what he said here. All right? Why did Aleister Crowley make the cut? Because John Lennon made the connection clear in an interview with Playboy when he said the whole Beatle idea was to do what you want, right? To take on your own responsibility. Lemon was paraphrasing, do what thou wilt, which is one of the central themes of Thelema and the religion founded by Aleister Crowley. If it feels good, do it. Sums up the entire generation of the hippies. If it feels good, do it, man. We are still suffering the effects in this country of that mindset. And it came from this dude. All right? Now, here's who he talked to. A guy named Lamb. Okay? And here's I just put this up, but it says, here's what he said. Today they are called angels and demons. Tomorrow they'll be called something else. This is the entities he was talking to. Are aliens really demons? And so before I read all this, let me kind of give you the disclaimer again. I don't believe in aliens from the planet Draco or any of that goofiness, right? I believe that we as humans deal with forces and beings that are multiple dimensional beings. In other words, when Paul says we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with principalities and powers. Listen, you understand he's talking about if God will pull back the curtain inside this room right now, what is in here with us would freak you out. We are very careful, we have been our whole marriage, about what comes into our home. That's our home. I mean, you listen, when we bought our home, well, it's actually all three of the houses that we've lived in, I would go in each room and pray in each room, claiming the blood of Christ on that place, going, God, this is your home. We are your children. This is our abode. We know we are not a match for anything that could come in at us. And so therefore, we just run to Christ and find our safety in him. And if you have a problem with that, because I see these Pentecostals calling out demons and making them move beds and all kinds of goofiness, and I'm thinking, I don't think you know what you're messing with. I'm not messing with that. I've been around multiple people in my life that I've been like, ooh. Do you know the story about your parents on the train on India with the Brahmin lady? Okay. Those kind of moments that just kind of set you back. Now, so if you're asking me, do I believe in aliens? No. I believe in fallen angels and I believe in demons. Two different things. But these interdimensional beings move in and out of the world that we live in, sometimes taking shape in a way that you and I wouldn't even know. Okay, now check this out. So he asked the question, are aliens real? There are many commonalities between what we call alien life form and demonic entities. And occultists like Aleister Crowley wrote about the connection, explaining that the intelligence was brought into the physical manifestation via a portal that was created during sex magic rituals called, whatever you want to call that, workings in 1918. The entity that was summoned was called Lamb. And Crowley considered it to be an interdimensional being, and it strongly resembles a gray alien of modern UFO research. So what I put is a picture of what people think a gray alien looks like. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you I know all about all that stuff. I know enough that good angels can come into your presence and you don't even know it. Book of Hebrews. Abraham had 3 of them come to his house when Sarah laughed in the tent. Whatever alien type showed up at Sodom and Gomorrah, the men of the city wanted to have sexual relations with them. So they obviously can take on form. You got to understand, fallen angels are really true beings. They're not just spirit people. And they can show up in dimension, out of dimension. And so is that what that is? I have no idea. Here's the drawing that he wrote back in 1904 when he started meeting with Lamb. And so a lot of his interdimensional thoughts and bringing magic into this world came from this being. And if you understand Genesis 6 and you understand the book of Enoch, that's where these individuals got this information. Okay, so now we're moving on, all right? So Aleister Crowley, who was a spy and worked for the Allies in World War II, Crowley gave the idea to Churchill to use the V sign as a magical foil or a way to counter, if you will, the Nazi swastika. Right? Now the swastika has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years. Now, the swastika was known as a symbol for working off the solar or the sun power gods. So he taught the V symbol to cut off the set curse of the swastika. In other words, we're going to stamp out your swastika that you're using for evil. We're going to use another evil sign and stamp it out, okay? It's just this one right here, right? So it became this, right? Now, who started the counterculture? I just told you that. Who was the influence of that? Him. What were all those hippies doing? Yeah, peace, bro. Now, I can get with the hippies on the no war thing. Me and them agree on that thing. I'm not down with war, okay? Let somebody else do all that. Now, notice here, the symbol of the V for victory refers to the story of Isis, Apophis, and Osiris, as it is illustrated as the lesser ritual of the hexagram, first published by Crowley in the Equinox, whatever book. You can go look it up if you want. In this ritual, the swastika is used to represent a mourning of Isis, as the V is used to symbolize Apophis, or Typhoon, the destroyer. This symbol explains Crowley's use of the V as a thwart to the swastika, is since Apophis slays Osiris, thus causing Isis to mourn. All right? Which is why they all have this symbolism along with the peace symbol, which is an upside down cross, also known as Nero's cross. Nero felt he could bring peace to the world if he could kill out the Christians. And so if you're a Christian wearing that, understand what's behind it. No Christian should ever have any of that. All right? Now, it's also, the V is tied in to the Kabbalist, oh, good night, I'm getting about done. Kabbalistic, there you go, thank you. Tree of life. And the V starting at the bottom of it. You can see the V here, it's the V here, that's what it's tied into. Now, L. Ron Hubbard, who is the founder of Scientology, was a disciple of Aleister Crowley. How many of you guys know L. Ron Hubbard? He died here, but he was the one who started this whole thing with Tom Cruise, and I'm trying to think of all the nut jobs that were in that. Yeah, there's the King of Queens chick got out of it though, right? Yeah. Christy Alley, yeah, that's right. So that's what he started this religion. Now remember what he's basing it off of. Now it gets even weirder, but Hubbard was good friends with Jack Parsons, who was JPL. JPL is the first guys in this country to start producing rockets. Okay? JBL today is owned by NASA. Okay? Now watch this. Jack Parsons, watch. Who at the time was a master of the Agape Lodge number 2, one of the American lodges of Aleister Crowley's OTO. Hubbard and Parsons had started a business together and were involved in Babylon working. Okay, I'm going to tell you what Babylon working is. Now remember, how did he summons the demon in 1918? Through sex magic. All occultism will always have something involved with sexuality involved in it every time. Every single time. Now, let me remind you, we talked about this in Sunday school just a few weeks ago. Men, we were given the commission that Satan failed on. And we were supposed to have dominion, right? And God said, be fruitful and multiply. Okay, there was a time when Lucifer and his angels were on this planet, and he led them in worship to God. But you know the one thing the angels didn't have, men? A womb man. A man with a womb. And so therefore, the one thing that God gave us as humanity was a way to reproduce ourselves physically. Angels didn't have that counterpart. When everybody says angels are sexless, that's not true. They're always male. And 2, there was no female to have sex with. So what happens is, because God gave us men, woman, and he, through that woman, gave us offspring, Satan's 2 number 1 hatreds, women and children. Which is why it's our job to be protectors of them. So being the head of my home isn't going, woman, you do as I tell you. It is God going, no, your job is to look over them, protect them, because there is an enemy. You ever read over there where Paul's talking about women's hair and clothing? And he's like, because of the angels? Man, there's something up in those verses that he's letting you know, hey, watch over your wife, dudes. Take care of them, because there's an enemy out there. They hate them because they didn't get that opportunity. So when Satan works out his deal through these satanic Luciferian religions, it always involves sexuality. Now watch. All right? Now, here's what goes down. The Babylon working was a series of magic ceremonies performed from January to March of 1946 by author, pioneer, rocket fuel scientist, and occultist Jack Parsons and Scientology founder Ron L. Hubbard. The ritual was essentially designed to manifest an individual incarnation of Babylon. In other words, the great whore of Babylon, the woman that rides the beast. All right. The ritual performed drew largely upon sex magic described by English author and occult teacher Aleister Crowley. Parsons and Hubbard aimed to magically fertilize a magical child through immaculate conception, which when born to a woman somewhere on earth 9 months following the working completion would become the Thelemic Messiah embodying Babylon. So what they would do is summons the demons while involved in sexuality, asking for the immaculate child, the woman, the girl, to come forth. Now, that was the origin of the people who started NASA. Now, sorry if I have some questions about what those guys got to say after that. Now, I'm just going to close with this because I'm out of time. It is interesting. Not 9 months later, but a little over a year and 6 months later, Hillary Clinton was born. Now, doesn't line up perfect, but he's asking for the summoning of the demon to be brought into the woman. And I'm thinking, man, he might have had something. Maybe it just took a little longer than the regular 9 months of the regular deal. All right, so when you go in and you see this, what they're trying to do is summons the demons into it. Now, I'm bringing all this out because you may be thinking, okay, Corey, but what's that got to do with Hollywood? Because it still goes on. It goes on right in front of your face, and a lot of these ritual magic sessions go on your television while you watch your favorite sporting events. And they're doing it again. And the people remember Francis Bacon's like, hey man, you can teach them a lot through entertainment. What's the number one show all year long? Super Bowl. All right, I'm out of time. I'm overtime. So, all right, we'll see you guys next week.